watching The Producer's Room, a streaming web series featuring the creators behind the hit songs of today's music industry. Songwriters, music producers, and artists discuss their creative process as well as examining current issues and technologies in today's rapidly changing music business. Your host is producer, songwriter, and educator Dave Tuff. Welcome to The Producer's Room. Welcome back to The Producer's Room. I'm Dave Tuff with Lij Shaw here at the Toy Box Studios in East Nashville. And we were just on the subject of finally getting the studio off the ground. And the question I was going to ask you is, for those maybe that have the dream that are watching of starting their own studio one day, what are some considerations? So when I ask that, maybe the positive things about being a studio owner and some of the difficulties or the hurdles that you have to jump over.
You mean don't answer, don't do it, don't do it. Don't answer like that.
And just everything about it, because I think you're really, we were just talking about this, I think you're really creative in that you're thinking of different income streams and models, not just the traditional studio model where a band comes in. So all of that, I'll throw it to your court and you can talk about it and I'll jump in.
Well, starting a studio, I think you begin it because you're just passionate about it. You have to. You got to want to do it so much that you are willing to do it in the face of a lot of obstacles for why maybe you shouldn't.
Well, we knew that you were, because you had cables running through your HVAC. So at that point, you knew you were going to be a...
So once you get there and you know you want to do it, then the question is, all right, well, what am I going to do and how am I going to do it and how am I going to make this work? And, my attitude is one of trying to think about like the first stuff I did. I think the first focus for me was just on trying to create the best sound I could, and it still is.
Right.
And so I think that learning your craft really well, just trying to make something that is great quality, so that when people come work with you in your studio, the work speaks for itself. But the concept of the work speaking for itself is also a misconception. And that can be something that is an obstacle for a lot of people starting a business. This idea that I'm just going to do great work and it's going to go out there and sell itself. It doesn't sell itself.
Right.
You gotta hustle and you gotta be creative and you gotta figure out ways to make yourself connect with everybody.
So you're just like, I'm just going to show up on a street corner and all these bands in East Nashville are just going to, come to me and I'll say, hey, here's my card and come record at my studio. And that probably doesn't happen. I mean, there is some word of mouth, right?
Definitely word of mouth.
Okay.
Definitely word of mouth. But word of mouth isn't passive either. I mean, word of mouth is connecting with people, networking. It's super important.
Right.
So, for me, I remember the first networking that I did was like, going out to shows or being in bands. That's a great way to connect with people and network. Nashville's coffee shop scene is really good. Of course, there's a lot more coffee shops now, but the coffee shop scene seemed like that was a great place to connect, especially in East Nashville at first. That was a great place to meet the other producers and the other studio people and the other session musicians.
Sure. I think a lot of people are shy at that because they think they're my competition. But what I've found a lot of times is if their room is booked, they'll recommend your room and all that kind of stuff, right?
It's definitely, you got to get past that right away.
Yeah.
So don't feel worried about competition. The truth is that, like, all ships rise with the high tide. So it's great to get to know the other studio owners. It's great to buddy up with them. It's great to know the other session musicians, the other producers. Also, it's just a fact. It's like making records is like a dating scene. You might produce a band today, and they may know that there are a bunch of other great producers out there, and it's possible that you'll build a relationship with one artist and produce all their records. But it's far more likely that it makes perfect sense for them to go produce their next record with somebody else, and maybe they go to somebody else in the next one. And that's totally fine, because that also means that somebody else is next coming to you to produce a record.
Sure, it all revolves. So is it all based on price point, or there's several other factors like you just alluded to. It's relationships and all that. But I guess my question is, how do you know where to set your price point? Are you looking at, and maybe this is too much of a businessy question, but are you looking at like competitors, or not? There's no competitors, but comparable studios, I should say. And how do you know how you're going to be able to eat. I guess is what it's more of like a business question.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is that you pay attention to what you already know is going on with your competitors, competition, with other studios, other producers that are out there. You have to get a feel for what people are used to and what people expect.
Sure.
So that helps. But at the same time, you also just simply have to look at, what is it going to take for you to be able to do this and do this well?
Right.
And model it around that.
Yeah.
And hopefully, if you create a way of producing records or a way of operating your studio such that you deliver great value to your clients, your customers, to the bands and artists you work with, that your price point will just simply be an accurate reflection of how valuable the session is. I always have taken the attitude, well, let's see, when it came to pricing, at one point I sort of had to just look at it, and I took good advice from a friend of mine who was just like, man, why don't you just, figure out what your monthly expense is and divide that up in such a way that you can price it to make that.
Makes sense.
But the idea, I kind of lost my train of thought.
That's all right, man.
The idea was that if I just did great work for people, and if I really got to know, this was my idea. When somebody comes into work with you, they've got an agenda. They got a need, right? They've got a need that needs solving. So they know they've got to record 6 songs, or they got to record 12 songs, or they got to get one song right, or they just got to get the track right, and they don't care about the vocals right now. And so it's important to have a great dialogue with the people you're working with, so that you can know at the beginning exactly what they need, and then all you have to do is just deliver that and a little more. Just
that's good advice.
Over deliver on it.
I like that.
And people will be very satisfied.
One more business question, and then I actually want to ask you about the other things that you're doing as far as in the studio, because like I said, I think you're really creative with that. But you were talking about the gear acquisition syndrome earlier, just buying all this gear. So at what point do you kind of at the studio, you go, hey, we have enough gear, we have enough mics, or do you ever reach that point?
Definitely, I've passed that point.
Okay.
I've got enough gear for 2 studios
to do
now.
the job.
I actually now look and I'm like, where can I have a second studio? I got to do something with all this gear.
Okay. So there is a saturation point where you get to, and you're like, okay.
Not only that, but there's a saturation point, and then what happens is when I built the studio and stopped buying gear, because all of a sudden I had to buy things like air conditioners and cables and connectors and coffee for the coffee machine and stuff. Which, how'd you like the coffee? Pretty good. Oh yeah, I forgot to finish. Yeah, I didn't deliver it to you.
Dude, I would probably be shaky anyway right now. But
so once you switch to that mindset, that's when I started realizing I'm going to use the gear I've got and just learn how to use it well. And man, I'm telling you, my recordings just transformed in a huge way by doing that.
That's great advice.
But the best thing I ever did was stop buying gear.
Yeah.
Because what I did is I started turning the focus on myself and just learning what I can do with the gear that I've got and how to use it. I mean, there is so much you can do with one microphone, one SM57. You can do a ton with that mic that you probably forget to do when you've got all kinds of other pieces of gear to mess around with,
Yeah. Well, I just thought it's something. I'm going to flip the script, because you always ask the desert island stuff and the pre and the. Yeah. No one's asked you. Have you done that on your podcast?
Not yet.
No. I want you to answer those later on. So I'll steal some of your questions.
All right.
Okay. So then because the first way I learned about the Toy Box Studios is your stereo sessions, because I saw a bunch of stuff on YouTube.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Stereo sessions. Right?
Stereo sessions. Yeah.
And I saw my buddy Seth on there, and then I was like, well, then I know that's that band. I've heard of that band. And so I think that's a really creative way. So I don't know if you want to get into that whole thing and how that started. And
Sure. So I got to start at the beginning on that. But this year is going to be my 12th year of doing something called the Hay Bale Studio at Bonnaroo.
Wow.
So Bonnaroo is a huge festival just south of Nashville. If you don't already know it, there's up to 100,000 people every year out in a giant farm field. Bands for 4 days straight from all over the world. Great, incredible artists, everything from hip hop to rock and roll. And I do something called the Hay Bale Studio. So for 12 years, I've taken a recording studio down there, set it up, and we put it inside a trailer. We surround the trailer with hundreds of bales of hay for soundproofing. And then we set up a band in there, and the band I'll mic up the band in 15 minutes. We have a band an hour.
Wow.
Band comes in, mic them up, do a fast sound check. And I say, what's the name of the first song? All right, we're rolling. And I mix it in a pair of headphones on the console. You know, we have a little bit of separation. We sort of have a little bit of a control room. It's like a thin piece of plexiglass between me and the band now, sort of a fake wall.
Wow.
But it helps, you know.
So you're mixing on the fly going down, or you're mixing?
Yeah, mixing on the fly.
Wow.
Mixing on the fly down to 2-track. And then we'll turn around and we'll master the tracks and make them available for radio within an hour.
And you're doing video though too, right? Because
we've done video. For a few
I've
years,
seen it on YouTube.
Video. Yep.
And yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe we can put the links to that.
Yeah,
stuff
so they can just. But if they're just searching at Hay Bale session, Bonnaroo. Whatever
yeah, the Hay Bale sessions or
Okay,
the Hay Bale
yeah.
studio at Bonnaroo.
We can put some links
find
at the
those.
bottom of the YouTube, no problem.
But so what happened was after doing that for a while, I started to see that the quality of the recordings was so fantastic. And thank you very much. No,
Well, no, but that's
my
a
point is like
testament once again, like you were saying, to the gear you're given, you're using it. Is that where you're going?
Well,
here?
where I'm going is the idea of the bands performing in real time together and mixing it through a console analog. So
Yeah.
not going to multitrack, not going to Pro Tools first and then trying to mix it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
The sound quality was repeatedly so pure when you just take a microphone, it goes through a cable, hits a console, gets mixed down, and then gets captured at the mix.
Yeah.
That I started thinking, why don't I just do the same thing at my studio? You know,
Mm-hmm.
just at my place. Why don't I do that as a great way to do promotion for the studio, and just connect with bands and artists and stuff like that. So we started doing something called stereo sessions here at the Toy Box, where we invite bands in, and ideally we'd have, you know, one night from 7 to 11, we could do up to 6 bands.
Wow.
And it's fast paced and it's a lot of fun. And it's like tons of great activity and people having a great time. You know,
I mean, do you think you
in terms
could do
of
that
stuff to
anywhere
do.
else than Nashville? Because there's so many talented. It's like if you were out if you're still, you know, in Omaha or something. You know?
I think you could definitely do it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea for anybody. You know, if you're a studio owner and you want to build
Yeah.
a community in your local town, your local studio, you might want to look into, you know, trying this where you create an event and you invite all the local bands to come perform. And there's so many simple ways to do video. You know what? Get a 360 VR camera, set it in the middle of the room.
That's cool.
Do live mixing of the bands
That's
and
pretty
start
cool.
a YouTube channel. It's a great way to connect with artists, connect with bands, do something really cool for your community and build your studio brand and awareness and connect with people and bring, you know, put eyes
But
on
even
your
there,
studio.
it shows me that you're no pun intended, thinking outside the box, because I just, you know, at the traditional model, you walk in a recording studio, you make a record. Well, that's a whole different thing. Now you're a video studio. I mean, but that's cool, you know. I mean, you're using it in other ways.
Well, and you know, the whole idea of mixing live to 2-track, I mean, that is a very overlooked way of making records these days when we've got an infinite number of tracks in a DAW.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's how many of the great records have been made. And, you know, the flip side is you're working with artists now that come in and they're like, oh, we don't really have a budget to record, you know. So what you can do is you can offer them a fantastic studio that sounds great, you know, working with somebody who really knows what they're doing, but figure out a simple way to track everything and get a mix in real time.
Right.
And then it's like, hey, come on
you
in and
gotta
get
be pretty
12
darn
songs
good
for
at your job too. I mean, not
True,
to give you props,
hopefully
but I
nobody
mean, you
does.
gotta kind of, I mean, you gotta. But I guess that just makes you work so much quicker, and you really have to make decisions. Like you have to commit. Obviously, it's not.
Yeah, and it's a form. It's like a form of live sound.
Yeah,
in the studio. Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's cool. So you were doing the Hay Bale and then the stereo sessions, and let's get into recording studio Rockstars, because I think you said you're how many episodes again? By the time this airs,
yeah, we'll
45 or
be
50.
close to 50 by the time this is out, I think. And
This is going to be your 50th guest. We got to really.
I don't know.
Think
Should I have
about
you back
that.
on the
No,
show?
not me, man. I'm talking about some heavy skit. I don't know.
All right, Dave Pensado. That's a message to you, my man.
Yeah, amen.
So, yeah, the podcast. So I decided. I actually was listening to podcasts a lot. You know, rewind 3-4 years ago, and I started discovering them, and I loved it. You know, I do a lot of traveling in the summer, and it's so much fun to just like load up your phone with podcasts and listen to interviews with people and stuff like that. And it was part of my research, my discovery for learning more about running business. So I hit a point where I was like, I was very interested in just trying to learn more about what it is to have a business as a studio or as a producer, and really let that grow and succeed. And so I actually discovered a guy named Pat Flynn,
Okay.
who's a
See, I
great
don't know.
podcaster.
I'm
Yeah,
not
he's
familiar.
nothing to do with recording music.
Yeah, just a
strictly
business, like
about
small
online business, and
Okay.
he's a great educator for what it takes to build a successful business, and particularly an online business too. And so that got me really interested in the podcasting, and then I started to see, I got the message that, with the internet and with online, what you do in music, there's an opportunity for you to get more creative and think about ways that you can grow and expand your business through the internet. So I just decided at one point, I was like, you know what, I want to start a podcast that's about recording.
Yeah.
And reach out to people about it, and it's been a blast.
Very
It's been
cool,
super fun.
Because you've had everything from, like you were talking about, the focus coming back to the studio, but you've had everything from producers to engineers to musicians. Have you had
Yeah, I've had some. I mean, a lot of everybody who's been on the show is a musician anyway.
Right.
But I think I am going to include session musicians too, because the audience for the podcast, I call all of my audience the rock stars.
Yeah.
So it's recording studio rock stars, and the theme of the show is interviews with professionals from the studio to hear their stories, learn from their experiences, so that you can take your recordings to the next level and be a rock star.
See, he told me he
yourself.
memorized the intro. You got it, man. That's awesome. So everybody can find you on iTunes.
Yep, we're on iTunes.
Recording Studio Rockstars.
Yeah, we were. I was proud.
And you got a website too.
We actually hit #1 in iTunes Music for 3 weeks when I launched too.
Wow.
Pretty proud of that.
Whoa.
So we got a website. The website is recordingstudiorockstars.com.
And you're just like...
If your fingers are tired, you can type in rsrockstars.com.
Wow, man. Make it easy for us
and,
lazy people.
It's on iTunes too, so you can search it there and you'll find it. Just type in recording or recording studio and you'll see it right away.
I listen all the time, so it's hard for me to catch up with all the good information coming out weekly. That's the hardest thing about podcasts. It's like
I know
you have to binge listen like you do Netflix.
I mean, I'm doing the show is weekly right now.
Yeah.
And it's an hour plus per show, so
yeah,
it's great if you're commuting. If you're doing any driving, you have time to listen. It'll be perfect.
And so, have I named all your fingers are in all these? We got to the Hay
Let's see. So Stereo Sessions, the Hay Bale Studio, Recording Studio Rockstars, the Toy Box Studio. If I'm forgetting something, I'll think of it in a minute.
Well, you're a dad too. So let's talk. I want to talk because I'm going to totally take a whole nother tangent, because I think you are one person that I've seen, and there's a few people in town, but that does a good job of balancing family life and studio and business ownership. So how do you do that? Because I know a lot of engineers out there are working 12, 14-hour days. Yeah. And is it just learning how to say no and cutting it off? Or
I'm not married now, but when I was, I am happy to say that my wife at the time has strong opinions about about some of that stuff.
Yeah,
and
yeah. So maybe kicked you in the ass a little bit.
Yeah, she really helped me understand the importance of having the family time and everything.
Yeah.
So that was just the best thing for me, was switching to family mode. Like I said, I went from being single to family of 5. So I went from 7 days a week in the studio, wake up in the morning, work until you take a break for dinner, come back and work until you fall asleep.
Yeah.
And
it's hard for us dudes to get it through our thick heads sometimes.
It
and
is.
That might be the way to live life sometimes.
But and I had this dream of sort of taking weekends off, and it took me a long time, but now for years, I mean, that's the way I do it. I got to a point where I realized that what I wanted to do was work Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. Mm-hmm. And so I started making sure that message was clear to everybody I talked to. So if somebody would call me to book me to work on something, or to book the studio with me, I would just tell them, these are my hours.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to do something different, I'd be happy to help you out, and we'll figure it out. But that's the way I like to do it.
That's great, man.
And it's amazing. It works. People are just like, sounds good. A lot of people are grateful. Wow. It's like you're doing everybody else a favor.
See, I always feel like, I'm going to offend somebody by doing it. But I think, like you said, people respect it, that you're carving out that time to...
And the truth is, what it also helped me do was shift from the first kind of recording experience that I ever learned, which was like everybody shows up at the studio and you're all kind of hanging out and there's lots of storytelling and coffee and everything, which is wonderful, but it doesn't get a whole lot of recording done, you know? And I adopted a mindset that says when it's time to go, I am hustling, I'm busting ass, and everything is as absolutely uber efficient as it can be. And, you know, I've been really fortunate to work with interns.
I was going to say you're delegating some too, which helps. Yeah,
big time, you know, and getting an assistant and having an assistant help me out, doing setup the night before session, you know, making sure that when we come in the morning and it's time to do a sound check, you know, if I'm starting at 10, by 11 o'clock in the morning, we're sound checking, rolling, and recording for the next 7 hours, you know.
I think it'd be better to almost ask you some of your production process while we're walking around the studio, to ask you like some stuff about your cue system. So actually what I want to get into now is going back to your podcast, and I know it's going to be really hard for you to put in a nutshell, but could you name, let's say 5 to 10 things that interviewing all these guests you have learned? I mean, I'm sure there's probably 200 things that you've learned that are new pieces of information, but that maybe get repeated over and over, or just some unique piece of information. So maybe give us the Cliff's Notes version of all 40 of your podcasts.
Well, I'll see if I can. I didn't prepare 5, but I will say that
just throw some out that come off the top of your head.
One that I hear a lot is get it right at the source.
That's good.
So it turns out that most of you want to know about mixing. That's just a fact of the internet, and that's a fact of what people are wanting and what people are spending money on and stuff like that. But you know, the maybe not so sexy answer to that is that the best way to get great mixes is to make sure that your recordings are right at the beginning of the source, that you capture a great recording of something.
That's good.
And I think a lot of us have a tendency to at first reach for these fancy tools with lights and buttons on them, or plugins to try and solve problems when we hear them, when in fact there's a great deal you can do, like I said, with the SM57 by just simply moving mics around.
Right.
So take a microphone, put it on an instrument, give yourself some time where you're not under stress and duress with a client, and experiment with mic placement.
That's great, man. It's a good piece.
Look, give it. You see what it sounds like when it's close. See what it sounds like when you back it off. Put it in the other room. You know, a guitar cabinet speaker. You got a speaker right here. If you put a mic right in the center, it's going to be super bright. You start moving it over to the side, it's got, you know, it starts to darken. You just angle it like that, and it's a different sound.
That's why you need one of those robots, man.
I saw those new robots.
Oh no!
You know,
you can move it yourself.
But I mean, the truth is too. I mean, I don't go and audition every possible mic angle on a session.
Right.
But if I hear something that I don't like, I know to go move the mic and try something else first. You know, and try changing.
That's great advice. Any other? We can just live with that one. But any other?
Well, that's a helpful one. You know, another one is just listen. So one of the first things to fail you in the studio is perspective.
That's great.
And it's just natural. It's a natural occurrence. You know, your ears get tired, your brain gets tired, even if your ears are functioning just fine. And as the more you work on something, the more you are focused and zoned in on what you're doing, and you sort of lose sight of, you know, what the bigger picture is. And so taking breaks and referencing other things and listening to other mixes is a great way to sort of reset your perspective on things. You know, and another way to do it is give yourself a break during the session. You know, work in short, intense bits, and give yourself a break so that you keep coming back to the music you're working on with a fresh perspective.
Man, I'm learning so much today. Okay, we're going to keep learning, and we're going to come back. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. See you guys soon.
Get some perspective.
Exactly.
What would a degree from Belmont University mean to you?
I'm so proud of you, darling.
Maybe it's time you found out.
Thanks, Dad. I can't believe I finally did it.
Belmont University Adult Degree Program. Finish what you started.
Welcome back to the Producer's Room. We're here with Lij Shaw in the Toy Box Studios in East Nashville again. And we were talking about one thing, and I would actually wanted to go back to it, about running a business. And you were saying that you did a podcast with Daniel Grimmett, which was a mutual, well, he's an acquaintance of mine, but he has some good tips to how to run a...
Daniel was awesome. So I've been fortunate to interview a lot of audio bloggers, you know, teachers through the internet. And he was one guy who very specifically created something called How to Make Money Producing Music Online Virtual Recording Studio.
Wow, that is pretty specific.
It is a course. He basically, he just had this great story. He went from sleeping on a floor in LA, learning how to produce music with a laptop in a home studio, to building, you know, like a $200,000 a year online recording studio business, working out of nothing more than a home studio. I mean, nothing like what you see in this picture right now. You know, just literally a laptop, maybe a keyboard or something like that. And it was all very legit, you know. And so he created this course where he teaches people all these elements of what's required to really take your ability to create music or mix and give it an online presence now. So I thought it was cool to see that, you know, and it's like if I had known that when I started out, it would have been awesome.
So people can find that probably on your website, right?
Yeah, actually, I have an affiliate link for it if you'd like to check it out. If you go to rsrockstars.com/VRS for Virtual Recording Studio.
Hey man, that sounds like I need to go buy that.
Yeah, that'll take you to it.
We all need it.
You can go take a look at it, and you can tell if you like it or not. I mean, one cool thing about doing the online courses with these bloggers that I've talked to, like Daniel, is that they all have money-back guarantees. So it's really like a no-risk thing. You can just go check it out. If you think it's totally awesome, you'll be psyched that you got it. And if it's not for you, no worries. Just you know, send an email and get your refund, and don't worry about it.
And then one other thing on the business side that we didn't really get to with the stereo sessions is you were saying if I had started a studio again, I would really consider zoning and the whole issue of stuff like that. Is that anything you want to speak to? Or
yeah, if you are going to do a home studio, I know a lot of people who invest quite a bit in the creation of their home studio. So when you decide to do that, just take a good look at what the your local laws say, your zoning laws, wherever you are. Make sure that you are going to be creating something that is going to function. You don't want to find yourself in an awkward situation later as far as what you're trying to do. So just take a look at your local situation.
Do you need an attorney for something like that? Because when you look at some of those, it's kind of ambiguous, but you're just saying some cities like Nashville, believe it or not, I can't believe we're still here, say you cannot run a business out of your home. Is that what the deal? Is that what the law says basically?
Yeah, actually in Nashville, in Nashville proper, Davidson County, they actually don't allow home studios to make records as a profession.
Music City, all right.
Specifically, it's working with other musicians or having people come over and that sort of thing. So
and yet
it's pretty
every
kooky,
other person in Nashville probably makes a record in their house.
I mean, there's more famous records than you can shake a stick at that are made out of home studios in Nashville and everywhere else.
We'll keep that in mind.
But I am working hard to change that.
Cool.
So hopefully
I'm ready to sign the petition. So whenever it comes out,
just keep your ears. Stay tuned.
We will.
You'll learn more.
We will. And can we investigate your, like, if people want to be in touch with you with stuff like that, where's like the best way? I mean, I usually do this at the end of the show, but get a hold of you from the recording studios.
Really easy. Just go to thetoyboxstudio.com, and I'm Lij at thetoyboxstudio.com.
Cool.
Or you can reach me at Lij at recordingstudiorockstars.com. Either way.
So now we have that. We may put
and Lij is Lij.
That's true. And
it's short for Elijah.
I loved how you put rhymes with fridge. So
Lij rhymes with fridge.
When your interview prep thing. Okay, so now I want to jump. I'm going to actually steal some of your questions because I loved some of the questions you were asking in your podcast, but I'm actually going to ask them in a little different way. So first thing I want to ask is, let's do this one. 3 to 5 desert island albums. You can give me the why. You can give me the why.
You know what? Honestly, I always avoid these questions when they show up on the internet because I'm like, I don't know. But I probably can think of some stuff right off the top of my head.
Okay.
So 3 to 5 desert album.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you why these would be desert
That's
island.
fine.
But what I think I can answer is influential to me. So one of the first albums that was really influential to me, because as a 10-year-old kid, I think I was 10 when it came out, and I was way into playing Atari, I trudged, like 5 to 10 miles through the snow on a snow day from school to go pick up this record when it was released at the local Kmart.
Okay.
And it was a vinyl copy of Pac-Man Fever.
Oh yeah.
It was
Pac-Man
all
Fever.
video game songs,
Yeah, man.
like Pac-Man Fever,
Was
and
it?
Centipede,
I thought that was just a single,
and
but they had a whole
Asteroids.
album
The
of
whole
it?
album,
Oh,
every song
totally.
was a video
That's awesome.
game song.
Wow.
So I actually had that for a while until my roommate was a guy named Mike Grimes here in Nashville, and when I lived with him, he had 10,000 records, and I had about 5. And when I
may have
moved
started
out,
a record store.
yeah, when I moved out, my records they kind of got absorbed by osmosis into his collection. So I was able to help stock his first record store
Wow,
with my
man.
copy of Pac-Man.
And now, how many does he have now? 2? Do they have a location? Anyway, we're getting.
Yeah. Anyway, he's a
Great,
awesome dude.
record store if you visit
Awesome dude.
Nashville and come to Grimes. So, Pac-Man Fever.
Pac-Man Fever, and then let's see. I was also very recently very privileged to do an interview with Jody Stevens of Big Star
Yeah.
for my podcast.
Wow, that's because you went to Memphis, didn't you? Because I saw some pictures on Facebook.
Yep, I went to
Yeah.
Memphis. I knew that I was going to interview Matt Ross Spang for the podcast. And so I thought, he's right there in Memphis. Why don't I just make a road trip to Memphis and go do the podcast interviews in person? And when I'm there, I'll just try and, stir up some other interviews. So I was able to go over there and interview Matt. And I also called up I called up Jody Stevens at Ardent Studios. So Jody was the drummer in Big Star.
Ooh, cool.
And Big Star was a huge influence on me. It was later on in my life.
Is that
good
called
buddy
the
of mine.
Big record? What's their record?
Number one record.
Number one record.
Big
yeah.
Star and number one record. Yep.
That's a good one to name your record.
And they had a double album out,
Yeah.
so that's what I had for a while.
Have you watched the one at Netflix? Didn't they have a Netflix?
Yeah, the documentary, the recent
I haven't
one,
watched it yet.
I think I've seen that. Yeah,
Okay, I need to
I forgot
check
the title of it. It's
Okay.
probably Big Star.
That makes sense.
But it's great.
Okay.
So yeah, that was a record that really influenced me a lot, and it was interesting to me. I don't even know if I got to tell Jody this. I think I told him on the interview, but some of our favorite, most influential records are ones that we don't even understand the first time we listen to them. And there's an idea that sometimes you might need to listen to a record 3 times and then you get it, and then it becomes this big life influence on you. And Big Star was definitely one for me.
Wow.
Like that. It was like the music was so different. It was loose. It had so much attitude and everything, and it was definitely human beings composing together.
That's cool, man.
Very, very much not a computer involved with that record. And when I got it and it clicked, it was just like mind blowing.
That's cool, man. So those are a little bit different, Pac-Man Fever to Big Star.
Yeah, right. So these are just records that were a part of my growing up. And then another record that was a huge influence on me was my brother and I were going in. So I grew up in Massachusetts, and we had one of our department stores was called Lij Mia's. Lij Mia's. So we'd go to Lij Mia and go look at jam boxes. And we were like, yeah, man, we got to go check these out.
Which you still have a nice collection of. But we'll have to turn the camera singers.
Yeah, exactly. And I got a couple back there. And so we'd go and we'd do something which we thought was the ultimate measurement of which jam box was better than another, because these all had cassette players in. So we called it the eject test. Okay. So you'd go up and you'd hit the eject button, and if it went like ejected really slowly with the little hydraulics, that was really awesome.
Okay.
So we'd go around and do that, and I went over to one and I hit it, and it pops up and there's a cassette in it. And I was like, oh, cool, what's this? And I checked it out, and it was just somebody had made the cassette, probably somebody who worked there.
Yeah.
And I popped it in and listened to it, and the first song was "Don't Eat That Yellow Snow." Don't Eat the Yellow Snow by Frank Zappa. And I was like, holy shit, man, what the hell is this? This is really cool. So I lifted the tape from the store.
Yeah,
dude.
man. Hey,
I pocketed that.
It was a
tape and I took
mixtape
it on
anyway,
with me.
right?
Sorry to be bad.
But they
bad
changed your
kids.
life. There you go.
Yeah, so I discovered Frank Zappa by this tape that somebody had made. And what was really funny was that there was a Warren Zevon track on it. The Werewolves of London was also on that tape. So for a long time, that's how I discovered Werewolves of London and Warren Zevon too. But for a long time, I thought that was a Frank Zappa song
yeah.
on the record.
Yeah.
So
That's cool, man.
yeah. Anyway, that
same
was
time period though.
huge influential record for me, and just an amazing, brilliant record. And this is a shout out to you, Joe Ciccarelli. I look forward to meeting you one day and interviewing you on Recording Studio Rockstars, because I'm pretty sure he was a key player in that record too, and got to make that record.
I bet he was. Yeah, that makes sense because he goes back to those days, and he's in Blackbird a lot, man. He's here in town.
Yeah, I know. I need to go
Get
say
him
hi to
on,
him.
man.
But so Frank Zappa was a big influence on me, and I used to love his guitar playing and his music. And it's funny, a lot of people were like, oh, I always liked the humor, but I didn't really like the music. I loved the music, and I kind of got sick of the humor,
Yeah, no, that's, wow, that's, yeah.
But I used to I'd have a nightmare about, one of my nightmares was that I was auditioning to be in Frank Zappa's band, and I broke my high E string on the guitar.
Oh, no.
That was the whole dream.
You saw that thing on, he was talking about how he just hires and fires musicians, that thing, and that was going around Facebook. That was... You could tell he kept a good band.
Was it the Black Page?
Yeah.
Was the one that was just like covered in notes for drummers.
Well, that's where a lot of good drummers got their start. Okay, so I'm going to steal some of your questions. The first thing I want to ask is just the general question, but then we're going to get more into detail. So we call this part rapid fire of my show. Favorite, and you're supposed to answer these fairly quickly. Favorite hardware tool, favorite software tool.
Okay, so favorite hardware tool. The reason I'm going to answer this one with my answer is because nobody else has been off.
Because you ask these questions every day, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, most of the answers I get are like, an 1176 or a great microphone. And one of my favorite hardware tools when I'm producing a session is this old school Boss Dr. Rhythm box that I've got.
We're going to have to see that on the studio
tour. Yeah, I'll
tour,
pull it
right?
out for you.
Cool.
But it is simply a metronome. But when you flip it open, it allows you, once I learned how to use it, I can tap out a tempo on a track with seamlessly. So what's interesting to me about this is that a lot of these, our DAWs have, tap tempo, whatever. They never work.
Yeah,
man.
So
they're always
it
so
actually
screwy.
does have a hardware tap tempo on it.
It's got a hardware button on it. I did find an app, so this will be my software one too. I found an app for the iPhone called Tempo.
Okay.
And that, because I tried them all out, right?
Yeah.
That is the best one. Get Tempo for the iPhone. And that one will also let you tap it out in real time and match the tempo of something that's going on. And the reason why it's so important is when you have a band in the studio and they're playing, what tends to happen, what I've seen happen a lot, is somebody's like, oh, let's find a tempo for that. Hold on, stop for a sec. What were you guys playing at?
Right.
Well, try this, try that, try that. And it screws everything up,
Yeah.
and you completely lost the moment. So the way that you want to get a tempo when you're tapping out a tempo on a band is have them play, have something that you can tap it out on, turn the damn sound off so that nobody hears your click while you're tapping it out, and then just watch it
lines up,
and see if it lines up. And then when it's lined up perfectly, then you drop it in real time with the band. You start it so that it's in perfect sync. And guess what? You're going to get a lot of smiling faces from the band who is playing it the way they want to play it, but now you're giving them the tempo
good
and the quick
feels
track.
what they're used to, and you're not forcing them. Yeah, that's
So
great,
there's
man.
my really
That's good.
geeky
I like
answer
that.
to your hardware software question.
Well, it's actually your question I stole.
Yeah, so the Boss Dr. Rhythm, the
Yeah.
old school one, I think it's like the Dr. 60 or I don't know what it is, but we'll find it.
Yeah, we'll show it on the
and the
camera.
app for your iPhone called Tempo. Those ones will allow you to find the tempo for a song
Wow.
seamlessly.
Okay, this may be another one of your questions. I'm trying to go from general to broad, but Desert Island, this keeps coming up in my questions, but Desert Island mic let's say converter, let's say a Desert Island vocal chain.
A great answer I got from somebody once was like, what would I need with a mic on a desert island? There's nobody else there to listen to anything I'm recording.
That's true.
There's no electricity
You're
either,
talking
right?
to the volleyball guy, whatever his name is.
So what's our chain?
I just give me like a chain. Let's say you're doing like guitar and vocal or something,
Let's see, guitar and vocal. So I have to admit that
Your ukulele on the
this
Hawaiian
mic
Island.
pre right here, the MCI mic pre on this is one of the best sounding guitar
Really?
pre's that I've ever
Wow.
heard. It sounds it's so rock and roll and so crunchy.
Wow.
When you just put a 57 or a ribbon mic on an amp, and I love it. It
Cool.
sounds great. As far as other pre's, I mean, I spent a lot of time using the Neve 1073s.
Yeah, we can
And
hardly,
I love those. And they're.
hardly beat that.
Has anybody have you guys ever heard of a Neve 1073? Is that news to anybody? But I mean, those sound fantastic,
exactly.
and they have a smoothing quality to sounds, which is great. And you can blast the crap out of them. One of our greatest guitar sounds, we used to plug in guitars direct. We would do things like use this guy right here, the Marshall JMP1.
Can we see that there, Jackie?
I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but this guy right here is the Marshall JMP1, which is a great. It's got a tube inside it, and it's a great direct guitar box. Sort of before we got into the digital world. And I think I swapped it out and put like a Mullard 12AX7 tube in there.
Nice.
But take this guy, the output of that, and then we would run that through a DI straight into a 1073.
Yeah.
And then we would crank the gain up so that fuzzes out and distorts. And then, hit, like a distressor or an 1176.
Yeah,
You
like
get
and I
great
would
guitar
assume
sounds that way.
we should have talked about the genre of music too. We're assuming rock and roll, but if I've said classical music, you may not want to.
I'd probably suggest like a Grace preamp, even though I've
Exactly.
never actually used one.
Right.
But I like, I still have this idea of like
Clean.
super clean preamps.
Right.
and
Well, I
what
think
I'm
Grace is
supposed
in
to
the
use.
ballpark. Yeah, definitely.
This is one of my clean preamps right here. I know you just turned the camera again. We're using that for our voices right now.
Cool.
In fact,
Cool.
this is is
that a custom job? I mean,
yeah, it's a
'cause
custom built. It's made by a guy named Obad Khan in St. Louis.
that's a cool name. Either way.
One of the best guitar players I ever met. So he was designing guitar amps for Crate when they came out with their line of really great tube amps. But he was also making outboard gear and stuff like that. I think these are sort of 1272 models,
Gotcha.
modeled after the Neves.
Yeah.
But that's sort of my super clean sound. And then another one, you don't have to keep turning, but right above that, you've got the PV tube pre up there is a really cool
So if you want color versus non-color,
secret.
you
Yeah,
got
that's
both
like
of
an
them there.
unexpected.
Yeah. No. Hey, man. I
And
know
you want to keep going? So then we've got the Ampex tube mic pre's up there. Those are the MX10s
From the
and
tape
MX35s. Yeah.
you can just still use.
And so those give you 4 different mic pre's. And I actually took it to a guy named Alex Welty here in Nashville, Creation Audio. He's designing some
I've heard.
amazing stuff, like
Heard of that.
secret weapon circuitry
Yeah.
kind of stuff, But he modified it and he put in phantom power and phase switches
Wow.
so that I can mix and match mics out on the floor and
That's
multi-mic
great.
guitar amp and stuff like that.
So we covered pre's. I mean,
Yeah.
a few of them. And
We didn't talk about vocals. You want a
Oh
vocal
yeah,
check?
yeah. Give me a vocal check.
All right, so here's one of my favorite ones here in the studio. I have these Calrex or the PQ 1161s. And one of my favorite chains here is to use a Shure SM7, which is a fantastic mic.
Yeah.
If you're ever just like
$300
wondering
range.
what mic it might just be good for everybody, or let's say your head hurts on the session, you really don't want to have to figure it out anymore. You just want to put something up and be like, this is probably going to work. Use an SM7.
Amen to that. Yeah.
So SM7 going into the PQ 1161, you can crank those up. They have a nice crunch to them.
Is that a
as they
pre
start
and an
to-
EQ? It looks like.
Yeah, it's a pre
Yeah.
with an EQ, and sometimes they'll use the EQ, and sometimes I won't.
Yeah.
It depends. And then I run that into the 1176, and I'll put that on like 4-to-1 with the open attack and the fast release. But a cool thing to do with the 1176 is take the input and just dime it.
Yeah.
Crank it all the way up
While you're tracking.
while you're tracking. The
Really?
most insane vocal sound you've ever heard.
I don't know if I'm brave enough for
And
that.
then, set that output, and then I hit it into a second compression here, the Calrec compressor, which I forgot the model number on that one.
So you just taking off a little bit
1354
there?
or something. Yeah, and I'll kind of like do a little 2-to-1 with that, and then hit the de-esser. And you can't...
hardware de-esser too.
Yeah, you got to watch out. Like, they can't...
Yeah.
If they take their headphones off a little bit,
Yeah.
you'll get squealing feedback. It's
Right,
that hot.
right.
But it's a great sound, man.
Wow. What's
People
your
perform
hardware?
differently,
What's your hardware de-esser? Buy a few.
Oh, I have the DBX 902s over there.
nice.
Those are an eBay find right there. Those,
Cool.
So the Calrex came from eBay. They were shipped over from BBC. The 1176 came from somewhere, New York or something. the DBX 902 came from California, and I forgot the name of the studio, but they were saying that like it was used by Nirvana and all these.
Between
other,
this console and that
Yeah, I
DSR,
mean,
we cover all the artists.
yeah, everything in this room is recorded. Everybody,
Exactly.
it's remarkable.
Isn't that cool?
Plus, the speakers have played back a lot of cool records
Exactly.
on Spotify.
All right, so let's get a little bit more specific, and then for our rapid fire, and then we're going to take our studio tour if that's cool. Because we want to see all these gadgets that you're talking about.
You don't want any more mic chains? Man,
No,
I got lots of them.
no, but we're going to get into more detail.
right.
Well, yeah, okay, bass drum. No, I'm just kidding. Hi-hat. No, I encourage people to listen to your podcast so they can learn about. I don't think we're going to have time to talk about all those chains, but
Do we have enough time on the show to play a few episodes of the podcast? They're only an hour long.
Maybe we have to go to commercial. The Wizard. Can we?
Come on, Wizard.
So let's do, because I'm going to steal this from Pensato. Let's do hardware, software. So let's say EQ, like you're in the hay bale truck, and you get one software EQ, one hardware EQ. What are you going to go to first? Like,
All right, so I'm in the hay bale. I've been.
Is that what it's called? The hay bale.
The
truck?
hay bale studio.
Okay.
The hay bale studio. Or the hay bale sessions, we've called them sometimes.
Yeah.
But I've been very fortunate to develop a great relationship with SSL.
Well,
so they will
That's all
send,
you need, a great relationship with
yeah,
SSL.
they Fady is a great guy there, and they'll send down their AWS 948 Plus.
Wow.
So that will arrive on a Friday, and on Monday and Tuesday we kind of assemble everything here and do a dry run, and then take it down there, recreate the studio, and I'll mix everything live on the AWS. So I use the SSL EQs while I'm mixing.
Which is
and
like
they sound-
parametric and like 3 or 4 parametrics on that or whatever.
we got I'm gonna say it wrong if I
Filters
say it, but we
and-
got I got some high frequencies, I got some low frequencies, some mids. I can
Yeah.
sweep it around, do whatever I want,
Yeah.
and it sounds killer.
And you're hitting all that in sound check? You're like...
I'm hitting it, just real time.
Man,
you know?
that is- you
I
gotta
mean,
be
I'll sound
fast.
check a little bit. Once we kind of get dialed in on the drums and things
Yeah,
sound pretty good,
right.
you just go for it.
Yeah.
It turns out what happens is I'm mixing it in real time, and what I'm mixing is the headphone feed that's going out to the band.
I got you.
So they're hearing what I'm doing, which
Right.
means that they're responding to it. We're having an actual
That's
musical
cool.
dialogue.
Yeah.
You know, I respond to them, they respond to me. They perform their instruments differently based
Right.
on what they hear in the headphones. And that's how it all kind of comes
That's cool.
together.
That's
and I
cool.
think that's what makes it work.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't always work.
Right,
That's the
right.
beauty of recording 40 bands in 4 days and over 100 songs mixed and mastered is
Man.
if you lose a few,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
sorry,
I
whoever,
would think
whoever it
of
was that got lost. in that
archival
process.
itself would be a nightmare, like you said. Okay, so
Yeah.
we got the hardware EQ covered, software EQ, maybe at your home studio.
Yeah, so software EQ, right now I'm absolutely loving the Fab Filter Pro
Yeah.
EQ, or
Yeah.
Pro Q.
Are they the Pro Q2? At
Yeah,
this
the Pro
point?
Q2, and that is the one, I just got it.
Yeah.
And it is so cool, man. It sounds great. I was doing a bunch of mixing on it this morning, and I honestly, being able to see the real-time analyzer there,
yeah.
so I can see what's going on,
the
especially
problems
the
are-
parts where I can't necessarily hear it in whatever situation I'm in,
Yeah.
makes a huge difference. And I was finding myself doing stuff with that EQ that I would not have felt as good about doing on some other ones. Maybe I feel like I did the same moves on that I liked, and if I had maybe done them on the built-in Pro Tools EQ, I might not have liked it in the same way.
Right. Because both of those are clean. The built-in Pro Tools is like no character, and I think of the Fab filters having not a lot of color or character in a good way.
Yeah.
But you're going to make different decisions, right?
Well, I mean, I was EQing. I did a lot of vocals with the Mic Tech PM9. It's a dynamic mic.
Yeah.
And I went in and kind of sculpted them out, took out some of the body, kind of brightened it up and
Yeah.
stuff. And those same moves might have bothered me in other ways, but
Yeah.
with this EQ, it really was
Yeah,
like,
that's
I was
cool.
like, man, that sounds
awesome.
great. So, and then it does some other things which I haven't gotten a chance to play with, but they've got this great video where they demonstrate the phase response of the EQ, and when they've got a certain setting where the phase response of the EQ as it goes up to the Nyquist frequency is perfect.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
no other
You're
EQ
talking
does that.
technical stuff.
Yeah, so like, great for mastering if you want to brighten
And
it
it's
up.
not that huge on DSP. Like you get into those, what are they called? The linear phase EQs on waves, and those take up everything. But I don't think Pro Q2 is that.
Yeah, I don't know.
much of
I
a
think it takes
hog.
up a little more when you
Does it?
switch it into that mode.
Oh,
but,
okay. Yeah.
But who cares?
Yeah, that's cool, man. Okay, so we got EQs covered. Let's do a couple more. Let's do compressors. So hardware That's where you talk about that guy.
Yeah.
Hardware compressor. I just hate to say one compressor, but we can do that. One hardware compressor, one software compressor.
You know, everybody's familiar with 1176.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what an LA2A is.
So we'll do something different.
And the distressor, which is
Yeah.
great. And I was just reading that Slate is about to release a distressor plugin, which sounds pretty cool. I'm excited for that. But I'm going to talk about my gain brains, which are right here in
let's
the
do
rack.
it, man.
Because these are funky and cool, and these are they are designed and built right here in Nashville.
Really?
So there's these are from the 70s.
Now that's not a 500. That's like, it looks taller than.
No,
500.
it's its own little custom
Okay,
rack,
okay.
you know. And when I was getting these on eBay, again, they were like $50 a piece or something for each one.
Wow.
And they're not super duper hi-fi, but they're cool as shit, man.
Yeah.
They have this great character to them, and they just make stuff sound cool. So you can, you gain into it. It's got an input output, and then you've got sort of an attack and a release. But you can go crazy with sounds. So like one of my favorite ways to use that is I'll put a ribbon mic. I've got a RCA 74 Junior that I'll put up on the piano, just kind of looking down at the whole piano, and then run that through the Ampex tube pre, gives it a kind of a nice dark crunch to it, and then slam it through that and single notes through the piano.
Really,
just incredible for doing melodic stuff on a
Check
session.
that out. Where can people hear all these sounds?
Let's see. I think if you go to the toyboxstudio.com and maybe under Lij Shaw, I think that's where I've got some examples of the catalog.
Cool, man.
But I'll certainly have to scramble now and make sure that.
Well, now with your podcast, I'm telling you, you gotta put all these links. So we can listen here.
I gotta do it.
Okay, so that was cool, man. I learned about a new compressor there, and then software compressor. Any particular one that jumps out at you? Or maybe not jumps out because it's compressed.
Yeah, let me see. Actually, I just started using the Mpressor.
I don't know that. Oh, Elysia.
The Elysia Mpressor.
I didn't know how you pronounce
And that
it.
thing is really cool.
Yeah,
that's
I've
really
seen
cool.
that.
I mean, there's so many cool software compressors,
Yeah.
but so really the answer for me is what's the one that I'm learning right this second.
Right.
That's what I'm most excited about. But that one does some really cool stuff. It has a button in it that you can switch in on the release time, and it sort of gives it more of a pumping, breathing sound.
Yeah.
So you can really get extreme with stuff and really manipulate it. And then it also has an EQ button where you can push the EQ in, and it'll help kind of do an EQ shift.
Do you find yourself, when you said that, and by the way, we're going to keep this segment going just a little bit longer because before we take a break, and then we'll take a tour, but do you find yourself getting overwhelmed with the amount of options, or it sounds like you're kind of learning, okay, I'm learning this plugin real in depth this month, and then I'll move on, but then I can go back to that because I know what it sounds like in my head kind of thing?
I definitely get overwhelmed with options.
Yeah.
I have had a great experience. Do we have a second?
Yeah,
Shall I tell you this anecdote?
Yeah.
All right, so I worked with the band, and we were doing rock stuff, and we had a chance we'd been working for a long time on this record already, and Blackbird was a new studio here in Nashville. So we went down there, we booked the A room, we were there for 4 days, and our only task was to mix one song. We got in there, and for 4 days, we just experimented, and we were like, well, we have to try everything on everything. So we started plugging in every single thing into the chain. The kick drum was like, well, what does it sound like through a V76? Well, how does it sound through a 1073? Well, how does it sound through this Pi compressor we've never heard before?
Crazy.
And so we tried everything, and 4
And
days
for our audience
later,
that doesn't know, Blackbird has probably the largest gear locker in the world, so you do have options.
they have everything, and it's not plugins; it's the real thing, right?
Right.
So, we spent 4 days experimenting with sounds. We did we did a flanging effect on the guitar solo too while we were there, and so we got something done.
Tape
while we were
flange.
there. Yeah, maybe we comped something while we were there too. Yeah, we did. We set up the tape flange. We set up the machines. We wanted we need a flanger, so we got the most complex stuff going. And then by the end of day 4, I think it was a Saturday, and it was Saturday night, and we pulled an all-nighter trying to mix this track. And it was Sunday morning, and they had a session coming in, it was I don't know if it was a Christian rock session or something like that, but they were coming in on a Sunday morning to start. and we were still there trying to print our last mix and get out the door by like 9 o'clock on a Sunday.
Man, that is options.
So,
options.
Yeah. The point is, the options did not help us, you know?
Yeah.
We didn't accomplish what we needed to accomplish. I mean, fortunately, the song got mixed later by, you know, somebody who was really good.
Yeah.
But
Somebody that was really good at
not
doing
us.
4 days.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
So yeah.
4
Anyway,
days at Blackbird.
you know, but you know, the plugins. I would love it if plugin companies. I would love it if Pro Tools would even create the ability to create just a favorites folder. You know, for your plugins. Like, these are the ones I want to work with today, and here's where I can find them.
Amen. That would be.
Just narrow it down.
We can't do that. We can't organize our folders in Pro Tools. Maybe, I don't know.
If we can, I haven't figured it out yet. I know we can do.
We can move things in categories.
Yeah, categories and then manufacturers.
That's true.
But we need a way to just simply say, like, here's today's folder.
Right.
Or here's the folder I'm using on this record.
I agree, because it's that list. Then your eyes just get lost.
Yeah, man, I get tired.
Let's do verbs, delays, and then maybe one other secret weapon you have that, I don't know, like that you use that a lot of people don't know about. We can do hardware. We can do software.
Yeah. So hardware is right behind you guys.
Yeah.
Up there in the closet, I've got an Echo Plate 2.
Nice.
So this is a plate reverb from the 70s.
Wow.
This guy was building them out of his garage in Illinois, I think.
Is that another eBay find, or
It
you
was
can't
an
really
eBay
ship
find.
that,
Yes,
right?
it was an eBay find, and it was down in Alabama, and I drove down there, and then did a little detour to hit IKEA in Atlanta on the way home.
There you go, man.
But I had to just slide the plate into the back of a minivan and drive it back, and I think it was like $400 or something.
Wow,
like that.
man, that's great.
It sounds awesome, and I use it like crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably overuse it, but I don't care.
No, you own your own plate, man. What can we say?
Yeah. And then another hardware one is over here in the rack. I've got this Mix Master. What is it called again? I'm going to say it wrong. It is the XL121.
Is that the one that looks like a spaceship, or I don't see?
Yeah, it's kind of
Oh, yeah.
spaceshipy, and it's got the EQ knobs and an input and output and a blend. But that's a spring reverb. So Master Room, I think, is what it was called.
Okay.
And they designed spring reverbs where they would stagger the springs so that they're out of phase with each other, and it cancels out the boing factor.
Oh, wow, man.
Yeah.
We're going deep.
So I've been taking that down to Bonnaroo for 12 years. So
Yeah.
that is our go-to reverb at Bonnaroo for the vocals and everything every time. It's a mono reverb right up the center. Just sounds cool. You know?
Cool.
It's just cool sounding.
Wow. You got a plate, you got a spring.
So don't forget about spring reverbs if you can find them, especially the little rack units. But then for software, recently I got the Eventide Ultra Verb, which
I think I've
love.
heard of that. I haven't
really
tried it
great
out.
sounding reverb. It's got a really nice, just sort of like endless,
Yeah. Put
plate
that on all your
features
indie
and
rock
that.
shoegazer.
And then a lot of people swear by the Valhalla reverb, which I haven't had a chance to use
I
yet.
have those, and I like them for the price. I definitely like them for the
I'm
price.
looking forward to trying that out.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome, man. And then any other secret, like, are you a decapitator guy? Any other, like, harmonic distortion you have?
Yeah, I use the Sansamp. I use the Sansamp almost in every mix. Sansamp is so simple. It's been around for ages. I've got, like, the real original rack unit right here and the pedal upstairs.
Yeah.
It's so easy to sort of sculpt your distortion, and it sounds like amp distortion.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now you're not going to put it on the track you're working on. You're going to need to duplicate your track and put it on an additional track if you just want to sort of blend distortion with the sound.
Right.
Because it doesn't have a mix knob on it.
Yeah. So like a send or a parallel.
It's just
or whatever you
like
wanna call
all amp, or it's either on or not.
That's cool.
But it's
so
a great
you
one.
find yourself using that one more than the plugin, or does it really?
No, because honestly, I use this if I'm tracking.
Yeah.
But when it's mix time, honestly, mixing has to happen quickly these days, and so I don't usually have the luxury to route
Send a
things
bunch
out of
of
the
stuff,
computer and go through stuff, even though that would be a really good idea.
You got on the soundboard gear, but
you
can just
Maybe I'll
use
need
it
to
for
try it
tracking. Yeah, man. Okay, well, that was cool. We did a lot of questions on a rapid fire segment.
Hey guys, we're going to take a break now. This is Dave Tuff, the producer's room, and we just finished our rapid fire segment, and we'll see you guys in a moment.
See you guys.
I have a gift of playing music. That's what I got. I was pretty much afraid of everything. Afraid of the world, afraid of speaking. Music was the voice I didn't have.
So reverbs, that's
Mm-hmm.
cool. But I wanted to ask you about delays. So
Delays.
outboards.
Outboard delays, I happen to have a 1/4-inch 2-track.
Well, that
so
helps.
when you can do real tape delay,
Yeah.
do real tape delay because it sounds awesome.
What about the the Echoplex stuff?
I've got an Echoplex here.
Do you?
Yeah, it's actually it's taking a break.
Okay. Yeah. You'll get that one fixed.
So it needs to go back to the shop again. That's one of the challenges with the old
Yeah.
ones is they're
Because like
can
on
be
something
finicky.
like that, which I don't know our audience can see on the 1/4-inch, don't you have to regenerate it if you want to?
Yeah,
like-
you just have to feed it back to itself.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
got to kind of send it and then bring it back and then send it again.
But can you space out the amount of delays too on an analog like that?
Yes, what you do is use the vary speed.
Oh, so it's slower between.
and then
the
you
two.
can slow it down or speed it up. But again, you're limited. I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
be like so fast or so slow, and you can't get any.
It's
can't do
not
any
like
different.
a sync to metronome on Pro Tools or something. Yeah.
No, you don't get that instant
Yeah.
delay. But one of the first things I learned from Bob Solomon over at Woodland Studios,
Yeah.
I remember he actually taught me parallel compression at first,
Yeah.
which was super cool. But he also taught me about delay times, and he said a lot of people think that you need to have your delay times exactly in sync.
Right.
And the truth is, you don't.
Ah.
You need to just have them close.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
and
true.
the truth is also that probably if they're not perfectly in sync, they
Might be
probably
better.
may sound better
Kind of
than
pop
if they're
out a little
perfectly
bit
in
more.
sync. Yeah.
I read this somewhere in some book about the guy. I'm totally going on a tangent, but he's an MTSU grad, Clark Schleicher. Is that how you say his last name? Anyway, he's a country mixer. He uses prime number delay times, and I thought.
Oh
that
yeah,
was
I got
all
a prime
interesting.
time delay right over there. It's digital.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, is
the,
that what
the Lexicon prime time is an old school delay, and the Effectron 3 above it is
Wow.
really, really cool. So
Man, so more outboard delays. So in the box,
here's what you need outboard delay for.
Yeah.
The reason you want to pick up the old rack unit delay units is because when you're in the studio and you're tracking your guitar, you're recording your guitar parts. You got your one mic up on the amp, your 57 on a guitar amp.
Right.
And you're thinking, wouldn't it be cool if this was a stereo guitar sound? You split it, you hit the delay, you pan the delay to the other side. You can dial in a sound right there. Everybody in the band gets excited in the control room.
That's
you get
cool.
excited, you get a cool sound, and you don't have to save it for later
Yeah.
like you have to reinvent it later on. You just create a really awesome sound now. Same thing with the spring reverb.
I keep seeing this trend
Send
in
out.
your descriptions, and you're really inspiring people while they're tracking. I mean, I know probably that's obvious to you.
I mean,
but
I think you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, music is about being inspired to be emotional, to be
Right.
excited, or to be fun, or
Yeah.
to be pissed off, or whatever it is. And you need to have, when the sound comes back and it inspires you to do that, you're going to perform the right way.
yeah, no, that's cool. So software delays.
So software delays is
any
a
Echo
no-brainer.
Boys or-
Yeah, it's just Sound Toys. Sound Toys. That's like a consistent theme on my podcast, and a lot of my guests have mentioned Sound Toys. Echo Boy is such a fantastic sounding reverb. There are a lot of great ones out there too, and it's worth exploring. A lot of the tape emulator ones are really good. But Echo Boy is just
it keeps
it's an
coming out,
all-around super easy one. I think one of the reasons I like it is you can just pop it on there. I think they were smart enough to make it sound dark. So when you pop it on, it doesn't sound in the way that maybe an
out,
H3000 creates alien sounds,
Yes,
know?
yes.
This one creates something that just sounds like cascading
Mm-hmm.
and bigger, and it sort of blends itself.
Amen.
So in that respect, it's pretty awesome.
Cool. So I want to see all these toys around your studio. So I think we're wrapped up with this rapid fire segment. It wasn't as rapid as it usually is, but I wanted to get in. I want to really dig in. And so
I like to slow things down.
No, that's
man.
good,
Take
man.
it slow, dude.
Okay. So speaking of, we're going to take a studio tour when we come back. Keep watching.